What time is it? It is 2:05. All right, so let's see if I can get rid of the Slack curse and try to get us back on track for the rest of the day. Hello, my name is Jason Scott. I am a doctorate of law with 2 degrees in divinity. I was a professor for a college in the Northeast where I have a large contingency of students. So if there's any problems with what I have in my speech, I just want to say that I'll stake my degree on everything I have to say. Now this references to a scandal that occurred earlier this year. When I proposed this talk, the way that the talks work with Nauticon is that you propose them a number of months in advance. And so I had a certain agenda of things that I could talk about. As it is, since I gave my talk last year, which was called The Great Failure of Wikipedia, I have had the opportunity to speak in other locations, colleges. I was flown to London to speak to a bunch of publishers about Wikipedia. And so I've had a lot of chances to be known as a Wikipedia critic. And so the problem with being a critic is that if all you ever hear from a critic is their description of how things are wrong, they end up sounding like a very negative person. And in any case where you're criticizing an endeavor that portrays itself as a volunteer effort, it sounds simply like you're somebody who's not willing on his own to make things better, but only willing to point out where things have gone wrong. I contest this. The reason I contest this is because I criticize aspects of Wikipedia within its greater context of the internet. When I first encountered Wikipedia a number of years ago, I had a number of issues with it and stated so in an essay called The Great Failure of Wikipedia. This brought on a little bit of heat, and it's also a very unusual place to be in for me because I'm known as a person who archives old things. Theoretically, a person like myself who would be dedicated to truth and gaining information would be interested in the largest gaining of information on the internet. At this point, Wikipedia has actually grown since my speech last year. Wikipedia is now certainly in the top 10 websites. It is, thanks to artificial Google Web, the #1 hit for pretty much all nouns, pretty much all living people, pretty much all major scientific concepts. They are now to the point that they are the dominant source of information. Now, there's a whole variety of thinking about this to say, well, yes, but at the end of the day, it's just Wikipedia. Now, we just had an experience which has just gone across the wires just a couple weeks ago, where a gentleman who was known as the essayist Firebrand had written a number of books which had gained some controversy, all well and good. In the meantime, somebody had vandalized his Wikipedia article to indicate that he was a terrorist. A natural activity. So this was fine, except that when he was trying to enter into this country on a speaking engagement, he was stopped at the border because they had a printed form of Wikipedia entry and confronted him about it. And this caused him some amount of trouble and is now echoed out. And the answer is, of course, it's just Wikipedia, but in fact it's not. So let's step back a little bit over here. I'm assuming, of course, that everyone here has in some way encountered Wikipedia, because if you haven't, Wikipedia has encountered you. At this point, you are probably gaining information online from people that is being given to you via Wikipedia, because they are providing it from Wikipedia. The situation that I had encountered earlier where gaining ground is now to the point that it is the dominant form of gaining information. And in some ways, this is very interesting. In some ways, this is very terrifying. So my original plan in talking about this was to talk about Wikipedia's specific exploits. Now, why would one do that? You go into a debate about why should one discuss what the exploits of something are. What is the meaning of full disclosure and what is the purpose of it? Well, the thing is that there's school of thought that says, no, you should speak with the vendor about something being exploitable and then let the vendor have time to patch the problem. Then there's the other opinion, which is espoused by this bastard named Dan Bernstein, which is that the fact that anyone knows about it indicates that anyone could know about it, and therefore everyone should know about it because everyone already does. It's a fascinating way to look at the world, and it must make him really popular. at the DMV. So when you approach something, say, with full disclosure, the idea is you say, I've noticed these problems. Now, when I say about Wikipedia, understand that Wikipedia is a very interesting case study in what people are calling open collaboration. That is to say, from its roots, it was portrayed, okay, not right from its roots, from its secondary roots in 2001, it was portrayed as an utterly open and collaborative organization. Even people running the organization would be collaborative. Even the process of running the management would be collaborative. So if you were able to collaborate by assisting it with its nonprofit status, you could collaborate simply by being somebody willing to step up to the plate. This doesn't scale. In fact, my theme for Wikipedia is it does not scale. It scales perfectly fine in database entries. In fact, the fact that you can go to one of the top 10 websites and be able to hit a fully dynamically generated web page and have it come back so fast, that is a masterwork of programming. I have no debate about that. I have never said a bad word about the development of the Wikimedia software. In fact, I use it myself. I control 4 or 5 wikis that are of a closed nature that only a few people can edit. I find the software absolutely wonderful. I never want anyone to think otherwise. The problem is that the software is run by people. And once you add people into the mix, you fall into the foibles of people. In Wikipedia, initially there was this multi-layer approach to being an administrator. You eventually had to have somebody with more power than somebody else. And in doing so, there was therefore a reward system in how could you possibly get a level up. So when people started getting levels up, initially it was a case of there being such a small audience that you could get away with that. In other words, if everyone kind of knew each other and it was less than a couple hundred people, you made several assumptions, and this is important. This is a problem that all collaboration websites tend to have. A collaborative website assumes that all the people in it who are contributing to it and are not overtly destroying it are on their side. And this is a fallacy as your group grows. The more people project, the more you are likely to get sleeper agents, moles, people who, for them, the fun part is acting like they're just into it like you and then waiting for their big moment to really fuck things up. This is critical to understand in what's now known as the SJ controversy. The SJ controversy basically arises because there was a gentleman who portrayed himself as a professor with 4 degrees, 2 of them a professor with students who, over the course of his 2 or 3 years on Wikipedia, gained every level in the game. He became an administrator, he became an arbitration committee member. In other words, he was a person whose job was to arbitrate on the accuracy of others and their willingness to follow the Wikipedia community standards. He eventually got to the point that he achieved level 70. He was able to actually get a working paid job with the Wikimedia Foundation. And this, unfortunately, was his undoing, because in doing so, he revealed that, in fact, he was not a 30-something professor with doctorates, but he was, in fact, a 24-year-old layabout from Kentucky who had simply had enough time to work on Wikipedia to do things like that. And initially, this was just accepted because he had done really good work. He had done a lot of work. And when you do a lot of work, people don't mind that you're not who you say you are, as long as you're not being destructive. Now, the problem, or the great wonder of Wikipedia, is that at any given time, if people are told what to look for, they will search through everything to prove their point. So, what you had was people went back and looked at his entire multi-thousand editing history. What of it was available, and was able to find places where he said, I will stake my degree on this, and say things like, I trust this book, I recommend it to all of my students. Now, initially, there was a kind of a little kerfuffle from the outside about this SJ situation, which was, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. How could you let that happen? To which the initial response on the management of Wikipedia was simply no big deal. Now, why was it no big deal? Because he had done really good work. This is the same thinking that when people find out that their local doctor of their town doesn't have a medical degree, they'll say instead, well, his 20 years of healing us make up for that. And even though he claimed he had a degree and claimed he was a doctor and wasn't, and kind of worked his way around, and maybe perhaps a few people died because they were undiagnosed, at the end of the day, he did really good work. So, what made people angry about SJ was that he was relying on others' trust network to give him greater and greater power within the process. And part of that was based on who he was. When questioned about this, Jimbo Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia, said that, well, he did it to protect his privacy, that this was a measure of pseudonymity to protect his identity from the freaks. Now, the problem is, of course, that the freaks are inherent through the entire system. In other words, a collaborative environment encourages a certain personality type. So, where am I going with this? Well, the thing is that there were several exploits that he used, up to and including the occasional referenced sock puppet. Now, what's a sock puppet? A sock puppet within Wikipedia is basically an account that you also run. Having multiple accounts is not any unusual measure in any other situation. It's not unusual to having multiple file folders. I mean, simply if you're doing thousands upon thousands of changes to a process, it sometimes helps to be able to say, well, this character is doing this amount of changes, and this character is focusing on that. But within Wikipedia, there's a vague credential system that exists, completely made up, which it basically encourages people to stay under one quote-unquote account, one real account, even if it's a pseudonym, even if it gives no information about you. And again, that doesn't scale. You can't function on a system like that. So, in what ways have people exploited Wikipedia? Well, like I said, there have been people who have, it turns out that literally 6 months later, that all they were doing was they were on there building up a sleeper account to do nothing but to make sure a certain point of view was pushed through an account. Because remember, if something has now become among the top 10 websites and the de facto form of information, there is an enormous amount of pressure to make sure that what is there stays. In this way, one of the exploits of Wikipedia is that persistence wins over quality. If you're able to maintain an account in a fashion that you wish things to run, in other words, have an account that is friendly and nice but constantly tries to keep these minor changes in place, you will eventually win. People walk away. You'll have people who are willing to deal with facts. That is to say, it's not that hard to say that there were this many presidents of the United States. Perhaps you can debate over whether or not the presidents before George Washington were presidents of the United States, but generally you can say elected president from here to here, this amount. It's very hard to dispute that fact. Attempts to change that are very easily thwarted, brought back, undone. Less easy are ones where you add false information. And by false information, I mean information totally within theme. If you're somebody who comes onto that section of Wikipedia and talks about an author and then starts to mention things about the author that nobody else has and references things that aren't accessible on the web, what you will find is that they will stay because people are afraid to go after somebody who appears to be a positive contributor. Because anybody who would be spending that much time on Wikipedia to contribute that much effort and yet still be trying to cause it harm can't possibly exist. Can't possibly exist. There was a vandal whose name was Willie on Wheels. Now, the thing to understand about Willie on Wheels, a name I might add that for some Wikipedians will literally cause them to drop their coffee and shake, is that he was an unbelievably persistent vandal, a scarily persistent vandal, constantly creating accounts, all of them with the last word on wheels in the account. So he would be Willie on Wheels, Genie on Wheels, Dog on Wheels, whatever on wheels. The Wikipedians found this was very easily handled. Let's just ban any account that has the word wheels in it. What a simple thing. Since this man